You awaken in a room that feels simultaneously familiar and foreign. The air is thick with the smell of wax, dust, and faint perfume. Sunlight struggles to pierce the grime on the tall windows of your small flat in East London. Outside, a persistent fog hangs over cobblestone streets, muffling the sounds of horse-drawn carriages and distant factory whistles. You are a woman of modest means in the year 1884, a time when the world around you is slowly industrializing, but daily life is still governed by rituals of survival and respectability. Your body feels oddly heavy, as though some invisible force presses against your limbs. Your mind foggy. You remember the small vial you always keep close your lifeline, your curse, laudanum, a tincture of opium. It is sold legally at chemist shops across London, advertised as a cure for almost every ailment a Victorian woman could endure. For you, it has become both medicine, companion, a constant presence since your early 20s. In a city teeming with suffering, poverty, disease, and loneliness, it is no wonder so many turn to this amber liquid, but its grip is subtle, almost polite, until one day it commands more than it soothes. You sit up slowly on the narrow bed. The sheets are thin and scratchy, and the pillow smells faintly of stale tobacco smoke from the room below. Across the room, a small wash basin stands beside a cracked mirror. Your reflection is pale, almost translucent, the eyes rimmed with dark rings. It is the face of someone who has lived through long, sleepless nights and lonely afternoons. You reach for your dress, a modest garment of dark wool, carefully stitched and patched. At the elbows, a mark of thrift, in a society that values appearances more than substance. London, in the 1880s, is a city of extremes. Gas lamps illuminate narrow streets crowded with vendors, beggars, and the occasional carriage of the well-to-do. The East End, where you live, is densely packed with workers, artisans, and family, eking out a living on wages barely enough to cover rent. You know that every coin spent on laudanum is a coin not spent on food yet. The trembling in your hands reminds you of why this choice feels inevitable. Addiction in your time is not just a personal vice. It is a socially sanctioned coping mechanism. Doctors prescribe opiates liberally, often ignoring the subtle warnings of dependency because the immediate relief outweighs concern for the future. You remember, in flashes, the first time you encountered laudanum. It was your mother's remedy for sleepless nights, a soothing draught that seemed to carry away worry with the gentle scent of camphor and alcohol. As a girl, you watched her dissolve her anxieties in this bitter liquid, and later, as a young woman, you inherited the habit. At first, it was occasional, a single dose to calm nerves before a family visit, or a long evening alone, but soon it became routine. Mornings, you felt the absence of it as sharply as a physical wound. By evening, you sought it like air. Your days follow a rigid pattern, dictated as much by habit as by necessity. You wait to the clatter of street vendors, perform basic cleaning and cooking, dress meticulously in the modest clothes allowed to a woman of your class, and step into the streets to procure necessities. Yet between these outwardly ordinary tasks lies the invisible ritual of addiction, measuring doses, concealing empty bottles, hiding the telltale tremor in your hands. The private struggle is as structured and predictable as any social etiquette you practice with the neighbors or in the market. On a particularly cold morning, you venture out to the chemist on Whitechapel Road. The streets are crowded with women carrying baskets of laundry or small children bundled in worn coats, men with suit-streaked faces hauling crates or pushing carts. The air is damp, thick with smoke from nearby factories and coal fires. You clutch your purse tightly, aware that every penny counts, and every coin spent on laudanum is a choice made in quiet desperation. The chemist, a stout man with spectacles perched on the end of his nose, greets you without surprise. He has seen countless women like you, delicate in appearance yet hardened by necessity. He measures the tincture carefully, pouring the amber liquid into a small glass vial. He warns of overuse in the polite, distant manner of someone trained to follow social conventions more than human concern. You nod, smile politely, and leave with the vial hidden beneath your shawl, aware that the journey home is as much a battle against your cravings as it is a walk through the bustling streets. In your solitude, you take your first dose of the day. The warmth spreads slowly, easing the tightness in your chest, dulling the anxiety that has never fully left you. Your vision softens. The sounds of the city blur into a distant hum. In these moments, you feel almost invincible, shielded from the relentless pressures of Victorian life, the rigid expectations, the judgments of neighbors, the knowledge of your own frailty. Yet even in these comforting moments, there is a shadow, the awareness that dependence is growing, that control is slipping, and that one day you may no longer distinguish between the remedy and the prison. Your life, in this early stage, is filled with small observations that might seem trivial, but reveal the fabric of existence. in 1880s London. The creak of floorboards in neighboring flats, the smell of coal smoke mingling with the tang of fish from the docks, the soft murmur of women gossiping in the street, all these details form the backdrop of your life. The world continues to move around you, largely indifferent to your private struggle. Yet, it is within this mundanity that the story of survival unfolds. You begin to notice the subtle effects of laudanum on your body and mind. Concentration wanes, memory becomes unreliable, emotions fluctuate unpredictably. Yet, paradoxically, the very substance that clouds your mind also sharpens your awareness of daily minutiae, the precise angle of a door latch, the number of footsteps from the street to your flat, the cadence of distant voices. Life becomes a series of measured observations, catalogued in a foggy consciousness. And in this meticulous recording, you find a strange comfort. As the evening draws near, the streets darken under gaslight, and the city takes on a more sinister appearance. Shadows stretch along the alleyways, and the fog thickens. You return to your flat with a sense of both relief and dread, knowing that another dose awaits, another ritual to repeat. In the quiet moments before sleep, you ponder the future. How long can this delicate balance between habit and necessity persist? How much longer can you navigate a society that enables yet subtly condemns your dependency? And then a question lingers in your mind, unresolved and pressing. What happens when the world outside continues its relentless march, and your private refuge, this amber bottle of laudanum, begins to demand more than you can give? The next morning begins much as the previous one did, with the grey light of dawn seeping through the dusty window panes. Your body protests as you rise, a dull ache radiating from your joints, your muscles stiff from restless sleep. Yet your mind immediately fixates on the small, familiar vial on the bedside table. You reach for it almost instinctively, feeling the weight of its presence as both a comfort and a reminder of the delicate tightrope you walk daily. Today, as on every day, you must balance survival with indulgence, appearances with reality. The streets of East London awaken slowly. From your window, you can see a butcher's cart being wheeled into place, a baker opening his shop to the early laborers, and the distant chimneys of factories beginning their relentless output of smoke and noise. There is a rhythm to it all, and you find yourself moving with it, part observer, part participant. The fog clings to your coat as you descend the narrow staircase of your build, careful not to rattle the door and draw attention from neighbors. Every day, you perform these small acts of discretion, aware that gossip travels faster than news in your tightly packed district. You notice a peculiar tension in the social interactions around you. Fellow women, wrapped in shawls and carrying baskets, speak in low voice about family troubles, missing wages, or the illness of a child. In this milieu, the use of laudanum is not a source of scandal so much as a quiet acknowledgement of shared hardship. Many of these women have their own secrets, remedies, and routines, some prescribed by doctors, some learned from mothers or neighbors. Addiction is woven subtly into the fabric of daily life, invisible yet present, like the smoke rising from factory chimneys. At the chemist's once more, you observe the interactions between the staff and the clientele. Each transaction follows a pattern: polite greetings, brief inquiries about health, careful measurement of powders or tinctures, and then the ritual of payment. Chemists, trained to act with discretion, know the subtle signs of dependency, yet their livelihoods often depend on repeat customers like you. This system, commercial, medical, social, has become a scaffold supporting your habit, even as it isolates you from full engagement with the world around you. Returning home, you take a more measured approach to your dose, aware that too much too soon will dull your capacity to function for the day. The fog of laudanum has a dual nature. It softens anxiety and discomfort, but also slows cognition, leaving subtle traces of confusion and fatigue. You notice, as you move about the apartment, that your memory is increasingly unreliable. Objects are misplaced, appointments forgotten, conversations half remembered. These lapses bring frustration, yet you also find an odd clarity in observing them, as if cataloging each misstep is itself a form of understanding. Life inside the flat is a careful negotiation of routine and dependence. Meals are simple bread, boiled potatoes, the occasional slice of meat, and often overlooked when the effects of laudanum press upon you. You clean and mend in quiet bursts of activity, but tasks that once seemed straightforward now require intense concentration. The monotony of domestic work, which once might have been soothing, now feels amplified against the backdrop of your dependency. Yet in these repetitive actions, there is a rhythm, a reassurance, a sense that life continues despite the internal chaos. The social constraints of your time impose further complexities. Victorian society, while outwardly focused on morality and propriety, is deeply structured around class, gender, and reputation. A woman's behavior is scrutinized with relentless subtlety, and any hint of impropriety, visible in tremors, flushed cheeks, or absent-mindedness, can invite judgment. The need for discretion is paramount, yet the very substance that demands concealment also leaves traces that others can sometimes detect. Your interactions with neighbors, shopkeepers, and acquaintances become exercises in performance. Measured speech, deliberate gestures, and careful avoidance of anything that might betray your private struggles. Even as you navigate these challenges, the world outside continues its relentless pace. The city is alive with work and noise, commerce and misfortune. Factory whistles signal shifts, children play in narrow alleyways, and street vendors call out their wares in practiced monotony. You watch these daily movements, feeling both connected and detached. In your haze, you are aware of both the continuity of life and the fragility of your own role within it. Every day becomes a careful observation of rhythms social, economic, and physiological that maintain the fragile balance between function and indulgence. Occasionally, moments of reflection pierce the haze of laudanum. You recall conversations with doctors, snippets of literature, or advice from friends and family. You recognize the duality of your existence, the coping mechanism that sustains you also constrains you, limiting both opportunity and freedom. The amber liquid provides temporary relief, but quietly dictates the boundaries of your world. You begin to ponder the long-term consequences, the slow erosion of health, the subtle narrowing of social circles, and the gradual loss of autonomy. There are also moments of confrontation with mortality and morality. You read, in the newspapers or from neighbors' tales, of women whose dependence has led to tragedy, illness, public scandal, or even death. Each story is both a warning and a mirror, reflecting the path you may be on. Yet, paradoxically, this awareness does not always inspire change. The comfort provided by laudanum, however temporary, remains more compelling than the abstract dangers of the future. The interplay of risk, reward, and social expectation creates a constant negotiation between survival, desire, and societal perception. Evenings bring a different rhythm. Shadows lengthen, lamps are lit, and the streets grow quieter but no less ominous. You retreat to your flat with a sense of cautious anticipation, aware that the night will demand both vigilance and surrender. The next dose awaits, along with the ritual of concealment and measurement. You find a peculiar solace in these routines, recognizing that while they are born of necessity and addiction, they also offer structure in a world often chaotic and indifferent. The toll on your physical and emotional state is becoming increasingly evident. Hands shake subtly, appetite diminishes, and mood fluctuates with alarming rapidity. Yet within this vulnerability lies an acute awareness of detail. The rustle of curtains, the precise pitch of a neighbor's cough, the cadence of footsteps on the street below. In these minute observations, you find a strange form of power and continuity, a way to anchor yourself even as the laudanum exerts its subtle dominion. And still, despite the familiarity of your life and the rituals that govern it, one question remains unresolved. As the boundaries between survival, habit, and dependency blur, what will you become when the substance that sustains you begins to dictate your very identity? Days and weeks pass in a rhythm that has become both predictable and perilous. The fog-laden streets of East London offer little change, yet your inner world has shifted profoundly. The amber vial of laudanum sits permanently within reach, a fixture as integral to your daily existence as bread or water. Its presence is both a comfort and a chain, a reminder that the line between assistance and dominion is perilously thin. You have come to recognize the full scope of its influence, not only over your body but over your mind, your choices, and the very shape of your life. Physically, the effects of long-term laudanum use are unmistakable. Your hands tremble almost constantly, subtle at first, but growing more pronounced with each week. Your appetite has waned, replaced by a mechanical adherence to meals rather than enjoyment or nourishment. Sleep comes, but it is fragmented and shallow, the laudanum offering neither true rest nor relief from the persistent anxieties that accompany dependency. Your reflection in the mirror seems altered, eyes glassy, cheeks pale, posture slightly stooped. You notice these changes with a mixture of resignation and disquiet, aware that no social etiquette can entirely mask them. Yet beyond the physical symptoms lies the more insidious transformation of identity. You are no longer simply a Victorian woman navigating a demanding society. You are, in many ways, defined by your dependence. Your conversations, movements, and thoughts are all subtly shaped by anticipation of the next dose, calculation of the day's limits, and the careful management of appearances. The external world, the bustling streets, the neighbors' routines, the marketplace's endless transactions continue largely unaffected, while your private reality narrows, concentrated around a singular amber-colored axis. Interactions with others have become exercises in careful observation and strategic concealment. Friends may drop by, curious about your well-being, but your smiles are practiced, your gestures deliberate, your explanations vague. You have learned the art of plausible distraction. A cough here, a busy hand there, a quick retreat to the privacy of your room. Outsiders can sense something is different, perhaps, but rarely understand the full extent. In Victorian society, where propriety masks complexity, the ordinary observer assumes calm domesticity hides all turbulence. Few recognize the quiet struggle unfolding beneath the surface. Despite these limitations, moments of acute clarity emerge. In the still hours before dawn, when the streets are silent and the gas lamps flicker, you reflect on the life you might have led absent this dependence. Perhaps you would have pursued a vocation, formed different social connections, or experienced life with a fullness now partially denied. These reflections bring both regret and understanding. Regret for the opportunities lost, understanding for the forces biological, social, and emotional that led to your current state. Dependency, you realize, is rarely the result of a single choice. It is an intricate interplay of circumstance, culture, and survival instinct. Your dependence has also heightened your awareness of the city around you. You notice the persistent inequalities, the children scavenging in the gutters, women laboring long hours for minimal pay, men succumbing to the relentless pace of industrial work. Laudanum is not merely a personal crutch, it is part of a broader societal mechanism that offers relief for the exhausted while leaving systemic hardships unchanged. In your haze, you perceive a city in which individual suffering is both ubiquitous and invisible, where each person navigates private challenges that often go unnoticed, much like your own. There are moments when the consequences of dependency manifest more tangibly. A miscalculation of dose leads to faintness. A forgotten meal causes dizziness. A lapse in attention produces near accidents on the crowded streets. Each incident is a reminder of the precarious balance you maintain. And yet, strangely, these near misses also reinforce the routines that keep you afloat. Survival becomes a careful negotiation between indulgence and moderation, between secrecy and necessity, and between the ephemeral comfort of laudanum and the enduring demands of life. The social implications also deepen. Gossip in the neighborhood has become inevitable, subtle yet persistent. Women whisper behind doors. Men glance knowingly. Children repeat fragments overheard. You learn to adapt, offering polite explanations or evading scrutiny entirely. The need to maintain appearances becomes a second form of labor, as consuming and exacting as any paid work. In this environment, survival is not only physical but social, requiring mastery of both substance and circumstance. As the weeks stretch into months, you begin to contemplate the long-term trajectory of your life. Victorian medicine is ill-equipped to address the nuanced complexities of addiction, offering little more than superficial advice, moralistic warnings, or continued prescription. The legal status of laudanum ensures its availability, but not its safety, creating a paradox. The very remedy intended to relieve suffering is capable of deepening it, shaping identities, and dictating life paths. In these moments of contemplation, a profound question arises, one that you cannot answer yet, but that shadows every decision if your sense of self has been gradually shaped by dependence, by ritual, and by the social structures surrounding you. How can you reclaim agency without unraveling the fragile equilibrium that has allowed you to endure? You realize that life in Victorian London, for women like yourself, is rarely a matter of dramatic upheaval. It is incremental, defined by minor victories and small defeats, measured in daily routines, and navigated within the constraints of social expectation. Addiction, in this context, is both a personal and societal phenomenon, a coping mechanism sanctioned by medicine, tolerated by neighbors, and quietly shaping countless lives in ways history often overlooks. As night descends, you sit by the window and watch the gas lamps flicker through the fog. You take the final dose for the day, feeling its warmth spread, and allow yourself a moment of reflection. In the amber haze, you recognize both resilience and vulnerability, understanding and surrender. You acknowledge the narrow victories, completing small tasks, maintaining social poise, and surviving each day while also sensing the slow, inexorable erosion of autonomy. And yet, even as you navigate these challenges, one final thought lingers, unresolved and haunting. In a world that demands both conformity and endurance, is survival worth the cost when the substance that sustains you begins to define the very boundaries of who you are? The city outside continues its indifferent rhythm. The fog thickens, and the amber glow of laudanum offers both solace and reminder. Your life, quiet and unremarkable in many eyes, has become a story of persistence, subtle suffering, and human adaptability, a testament to the unnoticed threads of history that shape lives in ways often unseen, yet profoundly consequential. You awaken in a small garret above your workshop, the first weak light of dawn filtering through the narrow window. The streets of Paris are still quiet, though soon the city will fill with the clatter of merchants, chatter of women carrying water and bread, and the distant calls of craftsmen opening their shops. You rise slowly, careful not to disturb the creaking wooden floorboards, aware that every sound in these old buildings carries far. Your day begins with the familiar routine of preparation, washing with cold water from a basin, dressing in a coarse tunic and leather apron, and checking the tools neatly arranged on the workbench. The life of a cobbler in 16th century Paris is both humble and precise. Your craft demands exactitude. Each shoe must fit a client's foot with care, withstand the rigors of daily life, and reflect the modest aspirations of those who can afford your services. Unlike tailors or carpenters, whose errors may be corrected with time or material, a poorly constructed shoe is immediately obvious, a direct reflection on your skill. Each measurement, each cut of leather, each stitch carries significance, and in this attention to detail lies both satisfaction and burden. Your workshop is modest, a low ceiling supported by thick beams, a single window for light, and shelves lined with scraps of leather in various colors and textures. Tools, knives, awls, hammers, and lasts are worn from years of use, each marked by small nicks and stains, yet meticulously maintained. You have learned to treat these instruments as extensions of your hands, each one responding to subtle pressure, angle, and rhythm. The work is repetitive, even tedious, yet it is through repetition that mastery emerges, and it is mastery that ensures survival in the competitive streets of Paris. Each day begins with a careful inspection of the materials. You select hides for upcoming orders, testing their suppleness and thickness by touch and eye. There is a quiet ritual to this selection. You hold a strip of leather up to the light, noting its grain and flexibility. You bend and twist, listening for the telltale creaks that indicate strength or weakness. These assessments, seemingly minute, determine the longevity and comfort of the shoes you craft. In a city where people walk miles on cobblestones and dirt roads, quality of footwear can dictate endurance, health, and social perception. Customers arrive sporadically. Some are merchants seeking practical shoes for their daily labor. Others are women with children hoping to repair worn boots. Occasionally, a member of the bourgeoisie visits, seeking fashionable yet sturdy shoes. Each interaction requires careful attention. Measurements must be exact, preferences noted, and social niceties observed. A misstep, whether in measurement or demeanor, can jeopardize future patronage. You have learned to read faces, noting subtle cues of satisfaction, impatience, or doubt, and to adjust your approach accordingly. The most meticulous part of your day is the measuring. Every foot is unique, every step a personal rhythm that must be accommodated. You take length, width, and arch into account, recording numbers on scraps of paper or in a small ledger. You note the curvature of toes, the distribution of weight, the calluses that reveal the shape of movement over years. Shoes are not merely objects of protection. They are instruments that mediate the relationship between human body and city streets. Inaccurate measurement is not just sloppy craftsmanship, it is a disruption of daily life, discomfort imposed upon another's body. There is also a quiet, almost meditative satisfaction in the repetition of these tasks. Cutting leather, piercing it with orviel, stretching, shaping, and stitching, each motion follows a rhythm established over years. Your hands remember the movements even when your mind wanders. There is comfort in this predictability, in the assurance that careful attention can create something enduring and useful. The monotony of labor is punctuated only by the occasional surprise, a new pattern of wear, a novel request from a client, a brief conversation in the marketplace. These small deviations remind you that life, even in routine, is never entirely predictable. The streets outside begin to swell with activity as the morning progresses. Vendors cry out their wares: bread, cheese, vegetables, fish, and cheap trinkets. Horses clatter over cobblestones, carts creak under their loads, and the distant toll of church bells marks the passing of hours. Through the window of your workshop, you observe this rhythm, understanding it as an external reflection of your own ordered labor. Your craft, precise and deliberate, exists in parallel to the chaotic energy of the city, providing both continuity and structure amidst the bustle. Yet life in Paris is not without its pressures. Competition among craftsmen is fierce, guild regulations strict, and patrons demanding. Delays or errors carry social as well as economic consequences. You must navigate not only the technical challenges of shoemaking but also the expectations of a society that prizes precision, thrift, and reputation. Every shoe you produce is a negotiation between material constraints, human anatomy, and social obligation. Mistakes are not merely personal failures, they can ripple outward, affecting trust, income, and the survival of your household. As the afternoon wears on, you notice the subtle consequences of exhaustion. Fingers stiffen, eyes strain in the dim light, and patience frays. Yet the discipline instilled through years of meticulous work keeps you moving. Each stitch, each measurement, each piece of leather is approached with renewed attention. In these moments, the distinction between labor and meditation blurs. Concentration becomes both escape and engagement. You feel a curious satisfaction in knowing that, despite the physical and mental fatigue, the output of your hands has tangible, lasting impact. Evenings are quiet but never empty. You tidy the workshop, organize scraps of leather, and prepare tools for the next day. Sometimes you sit by the window and observe neighbors in the narrow alleyways, reflecting on lives intersecting with your own. A mother haggles over bread, a child chases a stray dog, an apprentice sweeps the street. Each action is both mundane and significant, a reminder that survival is composed of countless small acts performed daily. And yet, even amidst the precision, satisfaction, and modest triumphs, a question lingers as you devote your life to measuring, perfecting, and shaping the tools of others' daily lives. What becomes of your own footsteps, your own journey, and the paths you might have taken beyond the narrow confines of the workshop? The morning fog clings stubbornly to the streets of Paris, curling around the timbered facades of houses and filtering through narrow alleys. You awaken once more in your modest garret above the workshop, the familiar creak of floorboards greeting your movement. Rising, you stretch tired limbs, your muscles stiff from the previous day's labor, and gather your tools for another round of meticulous work. The life of a cobbler is physically demanding, yet it is also structured in a way that allows your mind to wander while your hands repeat long-learned patterns. Stepping into the streets, you feel the rhythm of the city press upon you. Vendors call out their wares, children scuttle between feet, and the occasional carriage rattles over the uneven cobbles. Life is loud, chaotic, and unpredictable, yet your role as a craftsman provides a small island of order within this turmoil. Customers begin to arrive at your workshop, each with unique needs, temperaments, and expectations. Some bring worn shoes for repair, pointing out holes, frayed seams, or loosened soles. Others arrive with orders for new footwear, specifying size, material, and decorative elements with careful attention. Every request requires balance between technical skill, resource availability, and aesthetic judgment. Guild regulations weigh heavily on your daily routine. Membership in the Shoemakers Guild guarantees certain protections, access to materials, legal recognition, and a community of peers, but also imposes strict rules. Apprenticeships must be followed precisely, work must meet defined standards, and infractions are punished with fines or suspension. The guild dictates the pace and scope of your craft, influencing not only what you produce but how you engage with clients and competitors. It is a delicate balance. Respect the rules and you survive. Ignore them and you risk ruin. Apprentices assist in the workshop, their presence both a blessing and a source of vigilance. You must train, correct, and monitor them, ensuring they follow each measurement, stitch, and cuts with precision. Errors are not simply mistakes, they are risks that can affect the reputation of the workshop, the livelihood of your household, and even your standing within the guild. Teaching is an exercise in patience and observation, as much about shaping young hands as shaping minds attuned to the subtleties of leather, weight, and pressure. Customers themselves present constant challenges. Some are patient and grateful, offering stories and gossip as accompaniment to their orders. Others are exacting, inspecting every seam and stitch with sharp eyes. A misalignment, a slightly uneven sole, or a minor imperfection invites complaint or even refusal of payment. In these moments, your skill is tested not only in craft but in diplomacy. You must navigate expectations, maintain dignity, and negotiate satisfaction, all while ensuring that your own concentration is not broken by the unpredictable whims of others. There is also the subtle observation of social hierarchies that governs every interaction. A wealthy merchant may demand ornate shoes with durable soles, while a laborer requires sturdy, functional footwear. Your awareness of rank, wealth, and social perception informs every decision. Which materials to prioritize, how to address clients, and even how to measure subtly for comfort versus style. In this environment, technical precision is inseparable from social awareness. Survival is as much about reading people as it is about cutting leather. Midday offers a brief respite. You take a meal of bread, cheese, and watered wine in a quiet corner of the workshop, watching sunlight filter through the dusty window. The streets below are a tapestry of motion, merchants bargaining, children playing, and neighbors exchanging news. You reflect on your role within this ecosystem, small, precise, yet essential. The shoes you craft do more than protect feet. They enable journeys, work, and participation in the bustling life of Paris. Each pair represents not only craftsmanship but also human resilience, a hidden thread connecting you to the lives of countless others. As afternoon work resumes, fatigue creeps into your muscles and concentration wanes. The repetition of measurement, cutting, and stitching becomes both meditative and exhausting. You notice minor lapses, a seam slightly off-center, a measurement misrecorded, a stitch too tight. Each small error must be corrected immediately, for mistakes accumulate, and the reputation of your workshop depends on relentless vigilance. In these moments, you realize that craft is inseparable from attention, and attention demands energy, discipline, and patience. Even beyond technical concerns, your life is shaped by the broader uncertainties of 16th century Paris. The city is prone to upheavals, outbreaks of plague, fluctuations in food prices, disputes among guilds, and the occasional unrest in the streets. Every external event ripples into your daily routine, altering client behavior, material availability, and social interactions. You have learned to anticipate and adapt, storing extra leather when possible, negotiating flexible arrangements with apprentices, and monitoring the health and morale of both family and customers. Survival depends on vigilance as much as skill. Yet in this meticulous world, small pleasures exist. A perfectly executed pair of shoes brings quiet satisfaction. The laughter of an apprentice when a task succeeds offers warmth. A grateful nod from a client affirms purpose. These seemingly minor moments are essential, sustaining morale and providing subtle reassurance that the labor of repetition has meaning. Craft is not merely toil, it is also the slow accumulation of achievement, tangible and invisible within the rhythms of daily life. Evening descends with the shadows lengthening across the cobblestones. You close the workshop, tidy tools, and prepare for another day. From your window, you glimpse the city winding down, the dim glow of lanterns, the quiet murmur of families returning home, the occasional distant bell tolling the hour. Reflection becomes inevitable. The day has been long, precise, sometimes exhausting, yet it has been productive, socially engaged, and anchored in routine. Your identity is bound to your work, but also to the resilience and adaptability you exercise in managing countless details that define ordinary survival. And yet, a question persists, subtle but insistent. As you measure every step, shape every sole, and perfect each stitch, what will remain of your own life's direction? And what paths might remain untraveled, while your hands are occupied with the journeys of others? Weeks turn into months, and months into years, as the rhythm of your life in Paris settles into a measured cadence. Each morning begins with the familiar ritual of rising in your garret, arranging tools, and selecting leather with careful precision. Your hands have grown deft with years of repetition, each movement ingrained, each stitch guided by muscle memory and intuition. What once required conscious effort now flows with a quiet, almost automatic grace. Yet, alongside this mastery comes a growing awareness of the personal cost, the subtle erosion of freedom and spontaneity. The workshop has become more than a workplace. It is a microcosm of life itself. Walls lined with leather, tools worn smooth by daily use, and tables scarred with cuts and nicks create a space that is both comforting and constraining. You observe apprentices now more confident, following the methods you have meticulously taught. Yet you also sense the distance between your own body and mind and the broader world outside. Each pair of shoes that leaves your hands carries part of you, your skill, your care, your attention, but also reminds you that your energies are devoted more to others' journeys than your own. Over time, you notice the physical consequences of long hours bent over benches, hands calloused, back stiff, eyes strained. Pain is a constant companion, though largely ignored because it is woven into the fabric of your craft. Yet, even more profound is the mental and emotional weight of obsessive attention. Measurement, precision, and social negotiation consume thought, leaving little room for reflection, creativity, or exploration beyond the narrow confines of shoemaking. The world beyond the workshop exists largely in observation through the window, through gossip, or through the lives of your clients, but rarely as direct experience. Society continues its relentless pace outside your doors. Wars, plagues, and political shifts ripple through the city, touching lives in ways you only sometimes perceive. The streets that once felt chaotic now appear as patterns in motion, predictable rhythms of labor, negotiation, and survival. You observe, you note, and you adapt. Yet your own trajectory is largely shaped by the obligations you have accepted: the craft, the guild, the family, and the social expectations that govern daily behavior. Your identity has fused with routine, skill, and the needs of others, creating a life that is productive, respected, yet narrowly circumscribed. There are fleeting moments of reflection and personal revelation. Perhaps a particularly grateful client offers a rare word of recognition, or an apprentice shows unexpected ingenuity. These moments, however small, illuminate the broader significance of your labor. Every stitch, every measurement, every repaired shoe sustains the mobility, dignity, and daily survival of countless individuals. Your meticulousness has an unseen impact, connecting you to a web of ordinary lives that define the texture of Parisian society. In this, there is purpose, even if it is not grand or heroic in the usual sense. Yet the question of personal fulfillment persists. Obsessive attention to craft, while providing survival, stability, and modest social standing, has also limited the breadth of your experience. Opportunities to travel, to engage in other trades, to explore intellectual or artistic pursuits are deferred or forgotten. Life outside the workshop is a distant, abstract concept, observed but rarely lived. This tension between mastery and limitation shapes every decision, every day, and every reflection in quiet hours. The apprentices grow and some leave, carrying your methods into their own workshops. Your reputation solidifies, clients arrive with confidence, knowing your work is precise, durable, and reliable. Guild inspections yield approval, and your skills are recognized among peers. Yet this external validation, while reassuring, underscores an internal reality. Your life has become a measure of others' journeys. Your expertise shapes countless steps through Paris, yet your own steps beyond those dictated by labor are constrained by routine, obligation, and meticulous attention. Even as you navigate these constraints, the city persists in its dynamic, unpredictable rhythm. Markets bustle, children play, horses clatter, and distant church bells mark the passage of time. Life continues for those outside the workshop, moving through joys, sorrows, and small victories. You witness these flows with a mixture of engagement and detachment, aware that your own path has been narrowed, but also recognizing that through your craft, you contribute materially and socially to the broader rhythm of daily survival. As evening falls, you close the workshop and prepare your tools for the next day. Sitting by the window, you watch the dim glow of lanterns against the cobblestone streets. Reflection is inevitable. The life of a cobbler is repetitive, disciplined, and precise, yet it is also quietly impactful. Your meticulous labor sustains ordinary life, shapes the practical and social mobility of others, and embeds you in the hidden, essential infrastructure of urban society. Yet personal freedom, exploration, and the broader experiences of life remain partially out of reach. And so, a final question lingers, unresolved and pressing. In devoting your existence to perfecting the steps of others, measuring meticulously and shaping countless journeys, what is the cost to the path you might have walked for yourself? And is mastery of craft worth the limitation of experience? The night deepens, the city exhales into silence, and the workshop remains a quiet monument to care, precision, and the human desire to shape and preserve. Your hands rest on worn tools, your mind recalls countless measured steps, and your life, though bounded, has left its subtle imprint on the world. In the ordinary and the precise, in the repetitive and the unnoticed, history quietly persists, marked by the lives of those who labor with care, whether or not the world at large ever takes notice. You awaken to the muted grey of dawn, the wind whipping relentlessly against the stone walls of your lighthouse perched on a jagged cliff. The sound of waves pounding the rocks below has become a constant companion, a rhythm both hypnotic and oppressive. You rise slowly from a simple straw mattress, stiff from sleep and the chill that always lingers in this coastal tower. Each morning, the same routine greets you, lighting the fire, checking the lantern, maintaining the polished brass of the lamp, and scanning the horizon for ships navigating the treacherous waters. Life as a lighthouse keeper in 1700 is defined by discipline, observation, and solitude. You are part guardian, part laborer, part meteorologist, tasked with ensuring that the flames of the lantern guide mariners safely past hidden shoals, submerged rocks, and sudden reefs. Each step in your work is precise. The height of the flame, the cleanliness of the lens, the quantity and quality of oil. Negligence is not merely inconvenient, it is potentially catastrophic. One missed signal could mean shipwreck, drowning, and lives lost, a burden that rests squarely on your shoulders, even when storms rage and exhaustion threatens your focus. The interior of the lighthouse is austere. A single spiral staircase winds around the central column, connecting the lower living quarters to the lantern room above. Tools are arranged meticulously: brushes, lamp wicks, polished tongs, and oil flasks, each in a predetermined place. The stone floor is cold, the air damp and tinged with the scent of smoke and sea spray. Outside, the cliffs fall sharply to the churning water below, and the roar of waves is a constant, almost tactile presence. Here, solitude is both companion and adversary. Isolation allows focus, but it also magnifies every sound, every thought, every shadow. Your duties require vigilance. The lantern must be lit at dusk, maintained through the night, and extinguished only at dawn. Every hour, you climb the stairs to inspect the flame, adjust the wick, and replenish the oil supply. Observing the horizon is continuous work, ships appearing like distant shapes on the line where sea meets sky, storm gathering with deceptive quietness, and the subtle shifts in tides that can reveal or hide hidden hazards. The life you lead is structured around time, light, and water, with every action measured against the dual imperatives of safety and precision. Isolation also sharpens your perception. The sounds of the sea become a lexicon you learn to read. The pounding of waves on different rocks tell you about tides, the direction of wind in the cliffs predicts storms, the distant cries of seabirds signal shifts in weather patterns. You note the color of the sky at sunset and the reflection of moonlight on the water, creating mental maps of changing currents, hidden shoals, and safe passages. Observation is not passive, it is survival. Every detail has significance, and overlooking a minor pattern could have consequences that ripple far beyond the lighthouse walls. Meals are simple and repetitive: salted fish, hard bread, and occasionally cheese or porridge. Food is functional, sustaining strength for work and endurance against cold winds. Supplies arrive rarely, often by boat or from a nearby settlement, making planning essential. You ration carefully, aware that a sudden storm or delayed delivery could leave you without sustenance for days. Even leisure, when possible, is minimal. Reading scraps of old texts, sketching diagrams of the coastline, or noting observations in a weather log. Every activity serves a purpose, directly or indirectly linked to survival, preparation, or the work of the lighthouse. Days blend together in a rhythm dictated by nature. The light must remain constant, oil measured and replenished, lenses polished, and signals recorded. Nights are long and relentless, especially during storms. The roar of the sea is punctuated by the crash of waves, the whistle of wind through the tower, and the occasional distant groan of timber under pressure. You move through these hours with mechanical efficiency, yet the isolation allows the mind to wander, to reflect on the vastness of the ocean and your solitary role within it. You are acutely aware of the fragility of life, both human and maritime, and of the immense responsibility resting in your hands. Occasionally, ships appear on the horizon, their sails dark against the moonlit sea. You observe their course with careful attention, noting how currents, wind, and tide interact with their progress. Adjustments to the lantern's positioning or flame intensity are minor interventions, yet their importance cannot be overstated. Your work is subtle, almost invisible, yet it carries the weight of survival, commerce, and human lives. In these moments, the lighthouse feels less like a tower and more like a nexus of control within an unpredictable, chaotic world. Even amidst this responsibility, the monotony is profound. Hours stretch into days, and days into weeks, each filled with the repetition of the same actions: climbing stairs, trimming wicks, polishing glass, checking oil, noting weather patterns, observing the horizon. The mind seeks solace in patterns, in counting the number of waves hitting particular rocks, in cataloging the flights of gulls, or in noting changes in tidal currents. This obsession with counting, measuring, and observation is both a coping mechanism and a survival strategy, providing structure in an environment where chaos is constant and consequence is immediate. And yet, even as you perform your duties with meticulous care, one thought lingers at the edges of consciousness. As you measure every wave, monitor every flame, isolate yourself to protect others, what becomes of your own life beyond these walls? And what horizons remain unseen because you stand steadfast against the tide? The lighthouse stands rigid against the elements, a solitary sentinel on the edge of the Scottish coast. Morning breaks slowly through thick mist, and you awaken to the familiar cadence of wind, waves, and stone. Your body aches from the repeated labor of climbing stairs, carrying oil, and maintaining the heavy lantern. Yet despite fatigue, the mind remains alert, trained to scan the horizon, detect shift in weather, and respond to even the smallest deviation in the flame's brightness. The work is unrelenting, but it is also a discipline, a rhythm that shapes both day and thought. The isolation is profound. Unlike the streets of Paris or the workshops of a bustling city, here there is no social chatter, no casual exchange, no distraction beyond the crashing of the sea and the occasional cry of gulls. Letters from family are rare and often delayed by weeks, leaving news from home a distant echo. You have grown accustomed to the absence of human presence, yet it leaves room for reflection, imagination, and a kind of acute awareness. Time is marked not by conversation or events, but by the cycles of light and tide, meticulous maintenance of tools, and the slow rotation of the earth over the waves. Your days are punctuated by repetitive but essential tasks. The lantern must be trimmed, cleaned, and lit, oil containers checked, and replenished, lenses polished, to ensure maximum visibility. You catalog weather patterns, noting wind shifts, cloud formations, and the subtle movement of tides. Each observation is recorded in careful script, providing a log that may assist future keepers or aid in predicting storms. This precision is a quiet ritual, a tether to both responsibility and sanity in the face of relentless solitude. Storms are the ultimate test. The winter gales bring rain that lashes against the tower, waves that leap higher than the cliffs, and wind that penetrates every crack and crevice. During such nights, the lighthouse feels both protector and prisoner. Your hands work with practiced urgency, tending to the flame, adjusting oil levels, and ensuring that the lens remains unclouded by moisture or soot. Every failure here is catastrophic. You are acutely aware that lives depend on your attention, and the weight of that awareness presses steadily upon your chest. The mind must remain calm, even as the body trembles with cold and exertion. Even in calmer weather, the routine is exacting. Hours stretch with subtle variations, the number of waves crashing against specific rocks, the flight patterns of seabirds, or the reflection of sunlight across distant waters. Each measurement, each observation, becomes a method of structuring your existence, a coping mechanism against both boredom and anxiety. Counting and cataloging provide mental anchorage, a sense of control within a setting defined by unpredictability and danger. Over time, this practice becomes almost obsessive, as each detail of the natural world gains significance. Beyond mere survival is evidence of order in an otherwise chaotic environment. Occasionally, the sight of a distant ship brings both relief and anxiety. The vessel moves slowly, its course influenced by tides, currents, and hidden reefs. You adjust the flame with subtle precision, ensuring that the light reaches far enough to guide but not mislead. Observation here is an art, requiring patience, judgment, and an intimate understanding of both technology and nature. A misjudgment may seem trivial, a slightly dimmed wick, a momentary lapse in attention, but the consequences ripple outward, reaching the lives of those aboard ships you will never meet. Meals remain simple, functional, and infrequent. Salted fish, hard bread, and water suffice, supplemented occasionally by grains or preserved foods brought by supply boats. Eating is necessary, not pleasurable. Even moments of rest are measured, a short pause by the window to watch the tide, a few minutes of stretching to relieve stiffness, or a brief meditation on the cyclical rhythm of day and night. These interludes provide minor relief, but they are always temporary, a small breath before returning to the constant vigilance that defines existence here. Mental endurance is as crucial as physical stamina. You become attuned to the subtle changes in the environment, shifts in wind pressure, variations in the smell of salt and seaweed, or the distant rumble of underwater currents. Each observation informs action. Solitude sharpens perception, but also magnifies introspection. Thoughts drift to family, memories, regrets, and the vast unknown beyond the horizon. You find yourself counting not just waves, but days, hours, and minor victories. A ship safely guided past the reef, a storm survived without incident, a log completed with precision. These small markers sustain you, providing a narrative of competence and control amidst isolation. Yet, even amidst mastery, questions arise. You understand your role, the necessity of discipline, and the subtle interplay between observation and survival. Still, the mind wonders. In devoting your existence to the safety of others, to counting, monitoring, and perfecting each procedure, what of your own journey? What experiences, connections, or opportunities remain forever beyond reach, sacrificed to duty and isolation? The lighthouse is both shelter and prison, and the longer you remain its guardian, the more these questions linger at the edges of thought. As night falls, you climb the spiral stairs to the lantern room once more. The wind howls, waves crash with relentless force, and the lamp burns steadily, unwavering in its glow. You gaze across the dark expanse of the North Sea, observing the endless rhythm of water, sky, and distance. The solitude sharpens your perception, deepens your reflections, and illuminates the paradox of your life. Essential, disciplined, and impactful, yet profoundly confined. And so, as you trim the wick, polish the lens, and adjust the flame, one persistent thought remains unresolved. In standing vigil over the tides and guiding countless unknown travelers, how much of your own life slips quietly past, measured only by the passing waves and the flickering of light. Years pass slowly in the lighthouse. The relentless rhythm of tides, wind, and flame has become the foundation of your existence. Your hands are rough, scarred by repeated contact with metal, glass, and oil-soaked wicks. Your back aches, and your eyes strain from decades of scanning the horizon, yet there is a deep, quiet proficiency in your movements. Every adjustment of the lamp, every polish of the lens, every tally of waves has become second nature. Mastery is achieved not through glory, but through repetition, vigilance, and an intimate understanding of the natural world. Isolation is no longer merely a circumstance. It has become a companion. You have learned to read the sea as one reads a familiar language, attuned to subtle variations in wave patterns, wind direction, and weather changes. Birds and marine life provide cues, and the lighthouse itself the echo of your footsteps on stairs. The sway of the structure against the wind feels like an extension of your body. You are embedded in this environment, inseparable from its rhythms, yet the fusion carries the quiet cost of distance from other human experiences. The physical dangers of the lighthouse have not diminished. Storms continue to batter the cliffs with force sufficient to hurl debris and break timbers. The flame must be tended in the face of freezing winds, salt spray, and pitch darkness. One lapse, one overlooked signal, could have dire consequences for ships navigating treacherous waters. You are painfully aware of this weight, and it shapes each decision, each movement, each pause. Vigilance is both a necessity and an obsession. Even brief distraction is unacceptable. Years of solitude have also shaped your mind. The act of counting waves, observing ships, and noting weather patterns has developed. A meticulous attention to detail, an almost obsessive awareness of patterns in chaos. Yet with this skill comes a sense of narrow confinement. You are intimately connected to the vastness of the ocean, yet constrained to a single vantage point, witnessing lives and journeys without participating in them. The world beyond the cliffs is observed, catalogued, and analyzed, but rarely experienced. Moments of human connection are rare but intensely meaningful. Supply boats, letters from distant relatives, and occasional travelers provide fleeting interaction. Conversations are brief, polite, and often focused on practicalities, food, fuel, or weather. Yet even these minor encounters carry weight, reminders that the outside world continues, vibrant and unpredictable, beyond the controlled environment of the lighthouse. You measure the significance of these moments carefully, for social interaction has become a precious resource in a life otherwise dominated by routine and observation. Despite the monotony, satisfaction arises from accomplishment. Each ship safely guided past the rocks represents a tangible impact of your labor. Each storm weathered without incident is a testament to diligence and endurance. These victories are subtle, quiet, and uncelebrated, yet they carry profound significance. Your work is essential, life-preserving, and irreplaceable, even if unrecognized by the broader world. It is a life defined not by wealth, fame, or excitement, but by persistence, skill, and attention to detail. However, a persistent, unanswerable question shadows every day in dedicating your life to safeguarding others, observing and measuring every wave, and maintaining the light that guides countless journeys. What horizons are denied to your own existence? The world beyond the cliffs remains mostly unseen, a spectrum of experiences and possibilities that might have been yours. Duty and mastery require trade-offs, and the longer you serve, the more certain it becomes that personal adventure is secondary to the safety of strangers. Even as you tend the lamp on a storm-tossed night, you sense that the lighthouse itself is both a haven and a cage. It embodies the paradox of your existence, indispensable, disciplined, and quietly heroic, yet deeply confining. The flame burns steadily, casting a circle of light across the dark, restless sea. Each rotation marks time, each spark reflects your care, and each shadow cast upon the water is a reminder of lives touched indirectly by your vigilance. As dawn breaks after a long night of wind and waves, the horizon glows faintly. Ships appear, small and fragile, moving safely past hidden hazards thanks to your diligence. You pause, letting the rhythm of the ocean fill your senses. There is a strange satisfaction in witnessing these journeys, yet it is tempered by the persistent recognition of your own confinement. The world is vast, unpredictable, and alive, and yet you remain a solitary observer, a guardian whose vision is limited to the immediate needs of survival and guidance. And so, your reflection concludes with a quiet, lingering thought: the lighthouse ensures the safety of countless lives, yet in illuminating the paths of others, what becomes of the path you might have walked yourself? Does the value of guiding others outweigh the cost of the horizons you will never reach? The wind howls, the waves crash, and the lamp burns steadily. Life continues in repetition, vigilance, and care, a testament to human resilience, discipline, and the hidden impact of solitary labor. In the ordinary, the repetitive, and the unnoticed, history endures, quietly shaped by those who watch, measure, and illuminate the world for others while the edges of their own journeys remain unseen. You awaken to the damp chill of the underground tunnels, the smell of earth and mineral clinging to your clothes and hair. The wooden beams above, slick with condensation, stretch endlessly into darkness, supporting the rock overhead while casting shadows that flicker in the weak light of oil lamps. The day begins not with birdsong or the sun's warmth, but with the slow groan of the mine itself, the subtle shifting of stone, the drip of water from overhead, the echoing footsteps of fellow miners moving through narrow passages. Life in the Wieliczka salt mines is governed by routine, precision, and endurance. The tunnels are labyrinthine, carved over centuries, with veins of salt running in every direction, sparkling faintly in the dim light. You carry tools that are both simple and heavy: hammers, chisels, pickaxes. Each strike must be deliberate, each movement calculated. One wrong blow can collapse a fragile wall, dislodge a dangerous stalactite, or cause injury. The work is exhausting, physically punishing, and endlessly repetitive. Yet it is also essential. Salt is life, a valuable commodity in 18th century Europe, crucial for preservation, trade, and survival. The air is thick, heavy with dust, and the metallic tang of mineral particles. Every breath carries the mine's presence into your lungs, and you feel its weight as fatigue sets into muscles already taxed by endless labor. Hours pass in monotony, punctuated by the rhythmic sound of chisels striking salt, the scrape of wooden carts rolling over stone, and the occasional call of a supervisor issuing instructions or warnings. Silence and sound blend into a steady cadence, marking time more reliably than clocks, sun, or seasons ever could. Safety is a constant concern. The tunnels are prone to cave-ins, sudden floods, and shifts in rock that threaten both life and work. Miners are acutely aware of the precariousness of their position, noting every creak, every water seep, every subtle movement of stone above. Trust in your own judgment is crucial, as is vigilance toward others. A single lapse in attention could have consequences for the entire group, turning routine labor into tragedy. Survival is not merely about strength, but about awareness, discipline, and an intimate understanding of the mind's ever-changing environment. The labor is grueling, yet there is a strange rhythm to it. Swinging the pickaxe, scraping salt walls, chiseling delicate formations, each motion repeated endlessly becomes almost meditative. The hands, though blistered and calloused, gain skill. The muscles, though exhausted, gain endurance. You develop a subtle awareness of salt veins, how to strike without shattering, how to extract maximum material with minimal effort, and how to recognize the fragile beauty hidden within the rock. There is artistry in repetition, even if it is born from necessity rather than choice. Meals are simple and functional. Bread, salted meat, and water sustain you, eaten quickly in dimly lit corners before returning to labor. Hunger is a constant companion, dulled only by exhaustion. Social interaction is minimal, limited to brief exchanges with fellow miners about strategy, safety, or progress. Conversation often revolves around practical concerns: which tunnels are most productive, where water is seeping, or which walls are at risk of collapse. Friendship and camaraderie exist, but are fragile, overshadowed by the demands of survival and the omnipresent threat of danger. The mine itself is alive in subtle ways. The walls shimmer faintly with crystallized salt, reflecting the glow of lamps in muted, fractured patterns. The sound of dripping water echoes endlessly, carrying whispers of distant passages and unknown depths. You sense the slow movement of the earth beneath your feet, the weight of centuries pressing down, and the invisible forces that govern the subterranean world. Here, human presence is both temporary and significant. Each strike of a pickaxe, each cartful of salt, leaves a trace in a landscape that will endure long after you are gone. Time becomes abstract underground. Days blend into nights, measured not by sunlight, but by exhaustion, rhythm, and the careful tallying of extracted salt. You keep count of each cart, each block, each vein chipped away. Precision is not merely practical, it is psychological. a means of maintaining sanity in the oppressive darkness. The repetition of labor, the focus on measurable outcomes, and the structured attention to detail provide a fragile anchor against disorientation, fatigue, and the creeping awareness of mortality that surrounds every tunnel. Yet, even in this punishing environment, small pleasures exist. The faint sparkle of salt in the lantern light, the rare laughter of a fellow miner, the satisfaction of a wall carefully excavated without mishap all provide fleeting, essential relief. These moments are subtle, easily overlooked, yet they sustain morale, reinforce skill, and remind you that even in the harshest conditions, human resilience finds ways to persist. And still, a lingering thought presses at the edges of your awareness as you devote yourself to the extraction of salt, counting every block, monitoring every collapse, and surviving the mine's hidden dangers. What life lies beyond these tunnels, and what personal horizons remain forever unexplored beneath the weight of centuries of labor? The tunnels stretch endlessly, twisting and branching like a hidden city beneath the earth. Each day begins with the same ritual, descending the wooden ladders, stepping onto the cold, uneven stone floor, and inhaling the heavy, mineral-laden air that clings to lungs and skin. The smell of salt is omnipresent, mingled with moisture, dust, and the faint tang of iron from tools and rails. Your body has adapted to the oppressive atmosphere, your muscles ache, your joints protest, and yet you move with the rhythm of someone long accustomed to hardship. Every movement, every swing of the pickaxe is precise and deliberate, learned through repetition and necessity. Life underground is governed by routine, but even routine cannot eliminate danger. The mine is a living organism, shifting and settling unpredictably. Cracks appear in walls that seemed solid, water pools in unseen corners, and wooden supports groan under the pressure of centuries of rock. Miners speak in low tones about the mine's temper, understanding that neglecting these subtle signs can bring disaster. You watch, listen, and feel, developing an almost instinctual sense of which walls are stable, which veins are safe to strike, and which passages should be avoided. Survival is less about raw strength and about observation, judgment, and respect for the subterranean world. Physical exhaustion is relentless. Long hours of chiseling, hauling, and stacking blocks of salt leave your back stiff, hands blistered, and legs trembling. Yet this labor is also measured, structured, and oddly meditative. The repetition creates a rhythm that occupies the mind, a constant sequence of effort, reflection, and adjustment. You notice subtle patterns in the salt veins, the way crystalline structures fracture, the way water seeps along hidden faults, the way light reflects off different textures. These observations guide your work, transforming a brutal environment into a landscape you can navigate with skill, even mastery. Social interactions, though rare, carry a disproportionate weight. Fellow miners are your companions in shared hardship, though the bonds are forged in necessity rather than choice. Conversations are practical, warning each other of weak supports, discussing the progress of extraction, or recounting near misses and minor injuries. There is camaraderie in shared struggle, yet trust is tentative. The mind does not forgive carelessness, and every human interaction carries the unspoken recognition that a mistake could endanger not only yourself, but everyone nearby. Meals are brief and functional, taken in small nooks away from the immediate labor. Hard bread, salted meat, and occasionally preserved vegetables are eaten quickly, fueling strength for the work ahead. Even eating becomes a rhythm, measured and efficient, a practical necessity rather than a pleasure. Moments of rest are few and fleeting, often spent sitting on rough stone, stretching stiff muscles, or closing your eyes briefly while listening to the omnipresent drip of water and scrape of pickaxes. These pauses offer temporary relief, but the mine's demands never fully release their grip. Time underground loses its conventional meaning. Hours are marked by work cycles, the movement of supply carts, or the rising and falling of voices through distant tunnels. Days blur into nights, and the outside world becomes abstract, a distant concept rather than lived reality. Counting blocks of salt, noting the depth and location of each vein, and tracking the mine's subtle shifts become methods of structuring existence. Precision is both practical and psychological. By measuring and recording, you maintain a sense of control over an environment that is fundamentally unpredictable. Danger is always present, yet it is rarely dramatic. Most hazards are subtle, a weakening timber that may collapse under pressure, a small fissure in the rock that silently widens, water that seeps unnoticed until it pools dangerously deep. Awareness and vigilance are constant, exhausting the mind even as the body labors. You learn to anticipate, to read the mind's hidden signals, and to adjust continuously. Survival is incremental, built from thousands of minor, careful choices rather than heroic acts. Despite the hardship, there are occasional rewards. The gleam of freshly exposed salt reflecting the lamplight like a frozen river, provides a momentary thrill. A particularly productive section of the mine yields more than expected, offering pride in skill and diligence. Even laughter shared with fellow miners, brief and rare, becomes a treasured respite from monotony and danger. These small moments sustain morale, providing evidence that perseverance, attention, and endurance have tangible, if modest, rewards. Yet the work also imposes a quiet existential weight. Day after day, you chip away at rock that has endured for centuries, extracting material valued far beyond your own life. Your labor sustains commerce, preserves food, and supports distant societies. Yet the mine isolates you from the world it serves. The rhythm of extraction, counting, and measurement occupies nearly all of consciousness, leaving little room for personal reflection, exploration, or dreams beyond the tunnels. The price of survival and contribution is limitation, a narrowing of horizon and experience. And so, as you haul another block of salt, polish the rough edges and note its placement, a persistent thought surfaces, in spending your life beneath the earth, shaping a substance that sustains others. What becomes of the life you might have led above, in sunlight, conversation, and freedom? Does mastery of survival justify the sacrifice of the world outside these tunnels? Years in the salt mines have carved themselves into your body and mind. Your hands are calloused and scarred, your back stiff and unyielding from the relentless toil. Each swing of the pickaxe, each lift of a heavy block, has left its mark, both visible and invisible. Yet with this physical toll comes a profound expertise. You can now navigate the labyrinth of tunnels with confidence, predicting subtle shifts in rock sensing, water movement before it becomes a hazard, and locating the veins of salt that promise the most yield. Survival is no longer precarious, it is a skill honed over countless repetitions and small lessons learned in the dark. The mine is simultaneously oppressive and sustaining. It demands labor and vigilance, yet it also provides a structured, comprehensive world where action and consequence are tightly linked. Outside, the world is chaotic, unpredictable, and largely inaccessible. Here, every effort produces a measurable outcome: a block of salt extracted, a tunnel stabilized, a load safely transported. There is satisfaction in this certainty, even if it comes at the expense of freedom and comfort. Your life is defined by incremental achievements, each one modest yet essential to the wider economy above ground. Social bonds remain fragile yet vital. Fellow miners, once strangers, have become indispensable companions. They share knowledge of dangerous passages, coordinate effort to prevent collapse, and provide rare but deeply appreciated moments of human connection. Stories are whispered in the dim light, often recounting near misses, legendary collapses, or the lives of those who failed to respect the mine's hidden dangers. Trust is earned slowly, preserved cautiously, and can be broken by a single lapse in attention. Together, you navigate the perilous subterranean world, each life intertwined with the others in an invisible, delicate web. Yet the isolation and monotony exact a psychological cost. The repetitive labor, the perpetual darkness, and the detachment from the sun and seasons impose a unique strain on the mind. Dreams of open fields, bustling markets, or simple sunlight occupy the edges of consciousness. The knowledge that your work sustains distant lives while your own experience remain confined underground is both humbling and quietly disheartening. You become intimately aware of the tension between necessity and desire, between contribution and personal fulfillment. The mine itself is a living testament to human persistence. Its tunnels, carved over generations, shimmer faintly with crystallized salt, reflecting light in fractured, fleeting patterns. Every block you extract has both immediate utility and symbolic weight. It fuels trade, preserves food, and enables distant societies to thrive. Yet these contributions are invisible to those who benefit. Your labor is foundational, largely unrecognized, and quietly monumental. It is a reminder that much of history, commerce, survival, and progress rests on the unseen, painstaking work of individuals who endure hardship for collective benefit. Over time, your reflection deepens. You realize that the mine has shaped not only your skills and routines, but also your perception of life and time. Success is measured in survival, precision, and consistency. Hazard is navigated through observation and foresight. Achievement is often imperceptible to outsiders, yet it carries profound significance within this underground world. You recognize a subtle pride in this mastery, a quiet validation of your endurance, expertise, and the indispensable nature of your labor. Yet the fundamental question remains: in dedicating your life to the extraction of salt, to the sustenance of others, and to the careful navigation of an unforgiving subterranean world, what remains of the life you might have lived above ground? Can the hidden, silent impact of your labor justify the horizons you have foregone? This question lingers, unresolved, much like the faint glimmer of light, reflecting off salt crystals, tantalizing but just beyond reach. As you descend deeper into the tunnels each day, you are aware of your place in history. You are one among many who have labored quietly, who have endured a physical and psychological strain, and whose contribution sustains lives far removed from your own. The mind is both cage and canvas. It confines yet allows for skill, observation, and subtle mastery. The world above continues, unaware of the efforts beneath it, yet it depends entirely on them. In the ordinary, repetitive, and unseen work, history quietly unfolds, shaped by endurance, precision, and human resilience. The salt mine continues its relentless rhythm. The lamps flicker against crystalline walls, and your labor endures, unnoticed by most but vital to all. Your story is one of persistence, survival, and the quiet, unrecognized foundation upon which much of society depends, a testament to the hidden currents of history flowing beneath the surface of daily life. You awaken to the faint light seeping through narrow, grimy windows, the smell of dried herbs, powders, and oils thick in the air. Your body is stiff from the cramped quarters provided by the apothecary's lodging above the shop, and your mind is already alert to the day's demands. Outside, the streets of the town are stirring, merchants calling out their wares, carts rattling over cobblestones, and distant church bells marking the hours. Inside, however, time is measured differently, by the careful weighing of powders, the precise grinding of roots, and the subtle shifts in scent and texture that distinguish one preparation from another. Your day begins with preparation. Shelves line the walls, stacked with jars of dried herbs, roots, powdered minerals, and bottled liquids, each meticulously labeled and organized. The air smells of lavender, rosemary, dried chamomile, and the faint tang of copper from scales. You sweep the floor, dust the shelves, and inspect containers for pests or spoilage. Every movement is deliberate, every action part of a ritual that ensures both hygiene and efficiency. The health of countless townsfolk will depend, in part, on your attention to detail. The apothecary himself is both teacher and taskmaster. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scan every motion. One miscalculation, a grain too much, a drop too little, could affect the efficacy of a remedy or, worse, harm the patient. You learn to weigh with precision, to grind with consistent pressure, and to observe the subtle characteristic of each ingredient, the coarseness of powdered bark, the dryness of leaves, the clarity of oils. Repetition is the key to mastery, yet each day requires focus, patience, and unwavering attention. Orders arrive continuously. Townsfolk, merchants, and travelers bring ailments and requests, a cough to soothe, a fever to reduce, a wound to cleanse. Each request demands careful consideration. You measure powders, infuse herbs, and prepare tinctures with precise timing and proportion. Even the sequence of combining ingredients is crucial, for chemistry in this age is subtle and often unpredictable. The work is painstaking, and mistakes are dangerous, yet the rhythm of preparation provides structure, a steady heartbeat to the day. Apprenticeship is as much about observation as labor. You study not only techniques but also the logic behind them. Which herb alleviates pain? How does the potency of a tincture vary with season or origin? How do subtle differences in mineral powders affect reactions? Knowledge is transmitted through repetition, instruction, and careful correction. Each lesson is reinforced by practice, grinding, sifting, weighing, and mixing until technique becomes instinct. In this way, skill grows quietly, almost imperceptibly. In the shadow of the apothecary's authority, the work is both solitary and social. Alone, you measure, grind, and mix, yet your labor directly impacts the health of others. People enter the shop with ailments you may never fully understand, placing trust in remedies prepared with care. Occasionally, conversation occurs, advice on minor illnesses, instructions for using preparation, or discussions of symptoms, but most interactions are transactional and measured. Despite the low drama, each interaction carries weight. Even a small error could have lasting consequences for a patient. Time is both abundant and fleeting. Hours pass in the quiet repetition of preparation, broken only by the arrival of a new customer or the need to replenish stocks. You become acutely aware of rhythm, the time it takes to grind a root, the interval to allow an infusion to steep, the duration for powders to mix evenly. Patience is essential, as is the ability to observe minute changes, the color shift of a solution, the texture of a powder, the subtle scent of an herb. These tiny details are the difference between efficacy and failure, life and illness. Even in the monotony, moments of subtle fascination emerge. Watching tinctures slowly infuse, noticing patterns in herbal growth, or recognizing. The faint aroma of a perfectly dried leaf provides a quiet pleasure. The work may seem dull to outsiders, yet it is immersive, requiring focus, memory, and sensory acuity. Life in the apothecary's shop is measured, incremental, and meaningful, even if it appears unremarkable from the outside. And yet, a lingering question remains at the edge of your consciousness. In dedicating your days to the precise measurement of powders and the meticulous care of others' health, what becomes of your own understanding of life? Beyond these jars, scales, and tinctures, how much of the world outside this shop is experienced, and how much is surrender to routine, discipline, and the silent weight of responsibility? Days stretch into weeks, and weeks into months. Yet the rhythm of the apothecary's shop remains unwavering. You awaken before sunrise, the town still cloaked in mist, and descend the narrow staircase to the workspace below. The air is heavy with the mingled aromas of herbs, dried roots, oils, and powdered minerals. Your fingers, now accustomed to the textures of countless substances, move instinctively, sorting, grinding, and weighing with an efficiency born of repetition. Each action is precise, deliberate, and measured. There is no room for error, and yet there is an elegance in the discipline that has begun to define your existence. The work requires constant observation. You study the minute differences between ingredients, the varying hues of bark, the moisture content of leaves, the subtle crystallization of salts. Even seemingly identical powders can behave differently depending on their source or storage. Success depends on meticulous attention to these details, and failure is often invisible until the remedy reaches the patient. You begin to appreciate that mastery is not a matter of dramatic experimentation, but of careful, continuous refinement, a quiet science built on observation and patience. The apothecary's instruction has deepened. You are no longer merely a laborer following orders. You are learning to understand cause and effect, to predict reactions, and to recognize subtle signs of potency or deterioration. He demonstrates the extraction of oils, the preparation of salves, and the delicate infusion of medicinal plants. You replicate these processes countless times, gradually internalizing their logic. Mistakes are corrected, sometimes sharply, yet each correction builds knowledge and confidence. Over time, the repetitive labor begins to feel like an apprenticeship in both science and mindfulness, each task a lesson in precision, patience, and responsibility. Life in the shop also requires social navigation. Townsfolk bring ailments, worries, and complaints, placing their trust in remedies prepared largely by your hands. You must listen carefully, ask the right questions, and prepare solutions that balance tradition, observation, and experience. Even minor mistakes can erode trust, and subtle misjudgments can exacerbate illness. Every interaction carries weight, and the responsibility, though invisible, presses steadily on your consciousness. The work is quiet, almost invisible, yet the consequences are real and tangible. Routine is interspersed with moments of unexpected crisis. A patient may arrive with symptoms outside your experience, a powder may spoil unexpectedly, or an ingredient may run low. These situations demand adaptability, ingenuity, and calm deliberation. You have learned to improvise within strict boundaries, substituting herbs without compromising efficacy, adjusting proportions based on subtle differences, and using intuition guided by observation and instruction. In these moments, the work transforms from repetition to nuanced problem-solving, revealing the depth of knowledge hidden beneath the surface of mundane tasks. The apprenticeship is grueling, but it also provides a profound education in patience, diligence, and attention to detail. Each day teaches lessons that extend beyond the apothecary's shop, the importance of careful observation, the consequences of inattention, and the subtle interplay between skill, environment, and human need. You begin to perceive patterns not only in herbs and powders, but in human behavior, recognizing that trust, attention, and care are as essential as the ingredients themselves. Physical fatigue is constant but manageable. Hands are roughened from grinding and sifting, eyes strain from careful measurement, and back muscles ache from prolonged standing and stooping. Yet this fatigue is structured and predictable, offering a rhythm that contrasts with the uncertainty of life outside the shop. Even exhaustion becomes a familiar companion, a marker of dedication and progress rather than merely a burden. Amidst the monotony, there are quiet moments of fascination, watching tinctures slowly absorb color, inhaling the faint scent of newly dried herbs, or observing the subtle changes in powders over time becomes a form of meditation. Each observation, repeated and recorded, contributes to a growing internal map of knowledge. You begin to see the shop itself not as a place of labor alone, but as a microcosm of observation, analysis, and subtle mastery, a small world shaped by patience, attention, and endurance. Yet, even as competence grows, questions linger. You understand the craft, the precision, and the impact of your labor, but the repetition imposes limits on experience. The world outside the sun, the markets, the streets filled with human unpredictability remains largely unexplored. You have mastered the art of sustaining others' lives, yet in doing so, how much of your own life, curiosity, and freedom are surrendered to the quiet discipline of the apothecary's shop. And so, each evening, after carefully storing powders, cleaning tools, and extinguishing lamps, a persistent reflection emerges in dedicate your existence to the measured health of others. What experiences, insights, and possibilities are quietly passing beyond your reach? Can the life preserved in others' bodies compensate for the life that slips silently away from your own? Years of apprenticeship have transformed you. Your hands are steady, your eye discerning, and your mind finely attuned to the subtle variations of herbs, powders, and tinctures. You move through the apothecary's shop with practiced ease, performing tasks that once demanded intense concentration almost instinctively. Each preparation, whether a soothing salve, a fever-reducing tincture, or a minor wound remedy, is executed with precision, your labor shaping health and sustaining life. Yet this mastery comes at a subtle cost. The world beyond the shop, vibrant and unpredictable, remains largely observed rather than lived. Your role is simultaneously humble and monumental. The town depends on your accuracy and care, though few understand or acknowledge the invisible contribution of an apprentice's work. Each jar you weigh, each root you grind, each careful drop added to a mixture has tangible consequences. Illnesses are eased, suffering is alleviated, and the rhythms of everyday life continue, sustained quietly by the repetition and discipline of your labor. Recognition is scarce, but the significance of your impact is profound, woven invisibly into the daily lives of those you never truly know. The work itself is as much mental as physical. Constant attention to detail, observation of subtle changes, and anticipation of effects demand focus and patience. You learn to interpret signs others might overlook, the way a leaf crumbles, the faint color shift in a tincture, or the aroma that signals potency or decay. These small details, accumulated over years, form a sophisticated understanding of the craft that transcends the obvious. Mastery emerges not through dramatic action, but through the quiet accumulation of knowledge, the patient repetition of careful processes, and the constant calibration of perception. Yet mastery and routine coexist with persistent isolation. Conversations with the apothecary are limited, interactions with townsfolk are brief and functional, and your own exploration of the wider world is constrained. Time is measured in grains and drops, not by seasons or spontaneous experiences. The narrowness of this existence weighs subtly, even as competence and skill expand. You begin to understand that the life of an apprentice is paradoxical, empowered in one dimension, knowledge and impact, but restricted in another, personal freedom, broader experience, and leisure. Moments of reflection reveal a delicate tension. Each successful preparation brings satisfaction, a fever reduced, a wound eased, a cough soothed. Yet these successes are indirect. The benefits are experienced by others, while your own life remains largely shaped by labor, observation, and discipline. Your accomplishments are invisible, and the value of your work is measured not by recognition but by the survival and comfort of those who depend on it. In this, you glimpse the broader truth of many historical lives. Significance often exists quietly in work that shapes the world indirectly, without ceremony or applause. There is, however, subtle joy in the discipline. The repetitive, measured labor fosters mindfulness, focus, and an intimate understanding of the materials and processes that define your craft. You begin to appreciate patterns and relationships invisible to casual observation. The act of grinding, measuring, and blending becomes meditative, a practice of patience and careful attention. Even in solitude, there is a form of companionship with the herbs, powders, and tools that have become extensions of your skill, observation, and understanding. Yet even with proficiency and insight comes a lingering question, one that cannot be resolved by labor alone. In dedicating your life to the precise care of others, in shaping health and comfort with meticulous attention, what remains of the vitality, curiosity, and possibility that might have been your own? Can the life preserved in the bodies of others compensate for the life that quietly passes beneath your watchful hands? The shop falls silent as night descends. You clean and store tools, extinguish the lamps, and step into the dimly lit living quarters above. Outside, the town continues its rhythms, unaware of the invisible labor that sustains it. Within, you carry the quiet satisfaction and subtle burden of mastery, endurance, and service alike, defined by patience, precision, and the invisible, lasting impact of careful, dedicated work. History, you realize, is often shaped not by grand gestures, but by quiet diligence. The apprentice who measures powders, the miner who counts blocks of salt, the keeper who tends a lighthouse. In the ordinary, repetitive, and unnoticed, human resilience endures, shaping the world in ways that are both profound and largely unseen. You awaken before dawn, the faint glow of the Adriatic sunlight barely filtering through the shuttered windows of your workshop in Venice. The streets outside are slowly filling with merchants, gondoliers, and laborers, but inside, your day begins amidst heat, smoke, and the sharp, metallic scent of molten glass. The workshop is a narrow, elongated space, its floors blackened by years of sand and ash, walls lined with furnaces, and benches crowded with tools of varying shapes and sizes. Long rods of metal rest in wooden racks, their tips glowing faintly from the residual heat of yesterday's work. The work of a glassmaker is a careful balance between art and precision. Glass is mercurial. It bends to your will when properly heated, yet turns brittle and unforgiving when mishandled. You carry your tools, tongs, shears, blowpipes with deliberate care, knowing that a moment's inattention can ruin an entire piece, shatter precious material, or cause painful burns. Each day begins with tending the furnaces, ensuring that fire is evenly distributed, temperatures carefully monitored, and fuel added in measured quantities. The heat is oppressive, a constant companion that drains strength while sharpening focus. You begin by preparing the raw materials. Sand, soda, and lime are mixed in exact proportions, the subtle differences in color and texture demanding careful attention. These powders are then heated to extreme temperatures until they liquefy into glowing, molten river, each a fluid, vibrant medium that obeys only the guidance of skilled hands. Even the smallest miscalculation, too little heat, too much impurity can create imperfections, bubbles, or cracks that compromise the integrity of your work. Precision is paramount, yet flexibility, intuition, and experience are equally essential. As an apprentice or journeyman, much of your day is spent observing and repeating, absorbing techniques through repetition and careful attention. Senior glassmakers shape molten globules into delicate vessels, twisting, blowing, and stretching the material with a practiced grace that seems almost effortless. You replicate their movements, aware that each strike, turn, and puff of air must be timed exactly. The slightest hesitation or misalignment can result in disaster, molten glass clinging to tongs and rods, cracking in midair, or collapsing into a shapeless blob. The work is physically demanding and mentally exacting. You stand for hours in oppressive heat, muscles tense, eyes focused on the glowing material before you. Sweat drips from your brow, blending with soot and ash, yet your attention must remain unwavering. Every bubble, every streak, every subtle shift in color and viscosity conveys vital information about temperature, timing, and technique. You learn to read the glass as a living substance, responsive to touch, heat, and air, requiring constant observation and subtle adjustment. Social hierarchy in the workshop is rigid and subtle. Senior masters dictate technique, style, and schedule. Apprentices and assistants follow instructions closely, learning through observation and correction. The relationships are both instructive and competitive. Each success builds reputation. Each failure is noted and corrected. Mistakes are costly, not only materially but socially. Flawed piece may bring admonishment, while consistent skill earns respect, trust, and gradual autonomy. Within this structured environment, subtle rivalries and mentorships shape daily life. The town outside offers little distraction from the intensity of the workshop. Markets bustle, canals carry goods, and festivals animate Venetian life. Yet the workshop is an enclosed world of fire, sand, and molten artistry. Time is marked not by church bells or civic events, but by the readiness of furnaces, the cooling of glass, and the measured rhythm of labor. Every day follows a pattern: heat, shape, cool, correct, repeat. Monotony and repetition might seem dull, yet they are the invisible scaffolding on which skill, artistry, and survival are built. Despite the laborious and sometimes monotonous routine, there is subtle beauty in the work. The molten glass glows like captured sunlight, colors swirl and merge in unpredictable patterns, and finished pieces reflect light with a delicate brilliance. There is quiet satisfaction in shaping a vessel from raw, unyielding material into an object of utility or elegance. Small triumphs, a smooth curve, a perfectly thin wall, a bubble-free sphere, bring profound pride, a recognition of skill and patience rewarded. Yet a lingering question remains at the edge of consciousness. In devoting your days to the careful manipulation of fire and molten sand, shaping fragile objects that will outlast you but often go unseen, What of your own life outside this workshop? Does the mastery of craft compensate for the limited horizons of experience? And what stories of the world beyond these walls remain forever untold? The days in your workshop are long, but as your skills slowly refine, you begin to earn small responsibilities. Senior masters grant you tasks that once seemed impossibly delicate. You notice, too, how the mood of the workshop changes throughout the day. The first hours are quiet and tense as the furnaces heat and everyone prepares for work. By mid-morning, there is steady rhythm and muted conversation. By late afternoon, the air becomes heavy with exhaustion, and the glow of the furnaces seems to deepen into something almost hypnotic. As your skill grows, so does your awareness that glassmaking in Venice carries an unusual weight. It is not merely a craft, it is a guarded secret. The techniques you practice are the pride of the Republic, fiercely protected as if they were military strategies. This protection shapes your life, often subtly, sometimes sharply. To gain deeper knowledge, you are sent for periods to Murano, the island where Venice keeps its most precious glassmaking secrets. The boat ride there is short, but it feels like crossing a threshold into another world. While Venice teems with merchants, sailors, markets, and courtyards, Murano is quieter, almost monastic in its purpose. Its houses rise neatly alongside canals, but everywhere you walk, you hear the hum of glassmaking, the roar of furnaces, the tapping of tools, the faint tinkling of cooling glass. Murano's furnaces have burned without pause for centuries. The heat radiates through the narrow alleyways. Even the stones underfoot hold a subtle warmth. The island feels alive with fire, as if the furnaces themselves are ancient beasts that must be constantly fed. Your introduction to Murano's workshops is slow and ceremonial. The masters here are not merely craftsmen. They are custodians of the Republic's most valuable knowledge. They carry themselves with a quiet confidence, moving through the workshops with a sense of purpose and legacy. Some of them are old, far older than you expected, yet their hands remain steady. Years of heat have weathered their skin, but their eyes are sharp, trained on the molten glow that has shaped their lives. The work here involves a depth of detail you had never experienced. You learn how slight variations in sand quality change the clarity of glass, how impurities create unintended colors or unwanted streaks, and how the thickness of a cooling vessel can determine whether it survives or shatters. You are introduced to special additives, manganese, cobalt, and powdered metal, that create striking hues, deep blues, emerald greens, soft ambers. Each ingredient needs to be stored separately and handled with absolute precision. Even the measuring utensils are guarded, locked away after each use. There is a ritualistic element to the way the glassmakers handle these materials. Every action is deliberate, almost ceremonial. Nothing is rushed. Even mistakes are corrected with quiet, patient movements. You begin to realize that the work's calm rhythm does not emerge naturally. It is cultivated over decades, shaped by the island's traditions, and reinforced by the master's unwavering expectation. Murano's rules shape your daily life as tightly as any furnace. You are reminded, repeatedly, that leaving the island without permission is forbidden. Sharing techniques with outsiders is unthinkable. The Republic offers glassmakers privileges, comfortable homes, guaranteed incomes, prestige, but it also binds them. Once you commit to this life, your world becomes smaller, more defined, shaped by fire and duty. As you spend more time on Murano, the isolation becomes more apparent. Festivals and events take place within the island, not in Venice. Families live close to the workshops, and many children grow up knowing they will one day take up the same craft. Conversations often revolve around minor adjustments to mixtures, new shapes being attempted, or the behavior of the furnaces on different days. Life seems to loop gently around these topics, rarely straying into the world beyond the lagoon. Even the air feels different on Murano. It carries a faint mineral scent, sand, ash, and salt water. When the breeze blows from the west, it passes through the chimneys and brings with it the warmth of molten glass. You find yourself breathing more slowly here, your thoughts settling into a steady rhythm. At night, the silence is broken.